This is Creek with At the Table Podcast. Here at the Table Podcast, our goal is to break down biblical topics, make Scripture easy to understand, and to glorify God and His Word. We pray this content edifies, challenges, and blesses you. So without further ado, sit back and join us at the table.
Good day. Welcome to another episode of At the Table Podcast. This is me, your host, Trey, with my two wonderful, timely, creative co-hosts, John, Creek. How's it going, boys?
Okay. I was just counting the adjectives because if you only did two, I was going to pick which one I wanted assigned to me. I'm doing good. How are you doing, Creek?
I'm good. Can't complain.
Are you sure?
Dude,
I don't
weather's
think
been
you're trying
beautiful,
hard enough.
dude.
Yeah.
Dude, I went out, took my oldest child and went out, we were going to do shed hunting yesterday, go pick up deer sheds and maybe do a little arrowhead hunting too. Found one shed 50 yards from the truck and then walked 6 miles and did not find another one. I was like, Dad, come. I wore that kid out.
It's a journey.
It was kind of cool. I went mushroom hunting, like them little mushrooms.
Rails?
Yeah.
Oh.
But
Did you get any?
didn't find a dang thing, dude. Like all over the woods. But I did find a deer shed like 10 yards from where I like always am hanging out. Just found it. It's pretty old, so it's been there a while.
Dang.
But no mushrooms.
I
It's
got
okay.
to try morels for the first time this week. This last week. Yeah.
Dude, they're fire.
They're so good.
Dude, they are like a delicacy worldwide. People love them. Pay a lot of money for them.
I deep fried it.
$40 a pound.
I'm not going to lie to you guys. I have a bag of them at home that I'm frying up tonight.
Well, somebody told me that they seen on Facebook Marketplace somebody offering to buy them at $100 a pound.
Yep.
Dang.
It's fact, dude. People buy them all the time. I could never sell them, though, because they're so hard to find. And when you find it, you know how many people, like Dustin, our buddy Dustin, he found some and took a picture of it and put it on, like, a couple of our, like, group chats that are, like, people in the church.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's like, Where'd you find him? Where'd you find him?
Nope.
And I had a feeling that Dustin was just going to give away this location. I was like, in the woods, Dustin.
Yeah.
You found them in the woods, right? That's as specific as you need to get.
Yeah. We found some on the rig, or I guess my boss did, Derek. But so found a couple, but nothing crazy.
That's how you know you're a country boy. And I love that it goes like with our motif, like our brand, the At the Table. Like every conversation that we have before an episode is like something that goes on your table, whether it's deer, ducks, it's hunting of some kind.
This is true.
It's
That boy likes to eat.
That's
baby.
because we're a bunch of big boys that like to eat.
That's right. That's right.
But we're handsome.
How are you doing
so.
this week? Oh, you already said. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good, man. It was a long week, but man, I had a day off this weekend, so. Cool. And I did have to go buy a bunk bed. Now I'm looking forward to, after this episode, I have to go put it together.
On a scale of 1 to 10, like 10 being the most, 1 being the least, how much do you look forward to the day whenever them boys are old enough to do it on their own? You can just delegate it and play your Xbox.
I more look forward to the day that when we go do things like outdoors, they're useful.
Yeah.
Like
they can go look for stuff.
Yeah. Like right now we're in the training stage, you know? So like when I see deer tracks, I have to go over to, okay, this is a deer track. This is how you can more than likely tell, you know, what the sex is. This is, you know, location, numbering, grouping, stuff like that. Or this is a rub on a tree, you know, and pointing that stuff out. And even like where you would find things like arrowheads or sheds and stuff like that. And it's like, I look forward to the day when they're old enough where I have an army of people that I can just say, fan out.
And give me what you find.
Yeah, that's right, you know. Bring them back. Go forth. Be fruitful.
Man. Dude, it was a cool week, but I tell you what, man, the hurricane force winds we had yesterday, dear Lord.
I know.
Yeah.
This is the question of the hour right now. Are either of you two going to watch the eclipse tomorrow in any way, shape, or fashion?
No.
I'll be outside, so
Doesn't that happen during the daytime?
it's going to happen, I think, It's going to be at like 140-ish.
So you're gonna watch it. You'll be outside.
I
But
don't think
you
it's
should
gonna,
get some glasses if you're going to watch it here.
I don't think it's gonna even
It won't do much.
be that
probably.
much. Like where we're at, I don't think it's gonna be much of anything.
You'll be able to see it if you have eclipse glasses. That's
If
about
you're
it.
looking at the sun, but like it's not gonna make the sky darker.
Well, shadows will be way different. It'll be cool, but it won't be like in Arkansas in that line where it's going to get really dark. It won't be like that.
So what you're telling me is that time when I was 13 and I walked out of the theater and I threw those red and blue 3D glasses away, that was a mistake because I needed them tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yeah. That
pretty
makes sense.
much.
Why can't you just use sunglasses?
But yeah, they're not dark enough.
Welder's hat.
You probably use a
could do-
welder's hat.
Now that I have. Now that I will do.
You can also buy the glasses at
Just once
Casey's
or
for
twice
like
a year.
$2.
I just will.
I won't go as far as buying a pair of 3D glasses goes. I won't do that. Now, Weldon had that. I will do.
You're gonna see him mowing big and smalls with a welder's cap on, looking at the sun.
I will say this, dude. I have a welder's hat, but I can't weld to save my life, dude.
Yeah.
It about gives me a stroke trying because I like position my hand, and then as soon as I flip that cap down, it feels like my hand just moves. and how people do that all day and every day and don't have high blood pressure, I don't know.
Well, I wouldn't.
Or maybe they do. Maybe they do have high blood pressure. I don't know.
It's just something you learn how to do. I'm
gonna
not.
ask
I
Dustin.
don't speak that as someone who's good at it either. I'm
Maybe
not
that's
very
why
good at
all
it.
of Dustin's hair fell out. Maybe he welded too much. It stressed him out.
Wow. Nice.
Dude, it was so
Just
funny.
uncovered my brother's head on the podcast.
So we have a bald-headed brother. His name's Dustin. Amazing brother. Love the guy. And it was one night after church on Wednesday. We have a brother that's also bald named Ralph. We got a lot of bald brothers. But I flipped my hair. Like shook my hair, like flipped it. And Dustin said, "Careful, that's how Ralph lost his."
Man.
It's like, man, what? Is the brother wearing a toupee?
One time, Andy, another brother of ours who's becoming bald, he's in the process. We were in life group and he was trying to talk and he had those few hairs on the top or kind of getting down in his face and he kept trying to flick him over. Dustin said, "Be careful with those bangs, man."
Okay. This might be wrong. It might be wrong.
Uh-oh.
I have a feeling.
I can't do it.
What? You built it up.
Just don't. If it, do it. Say it. Come on.
I think it was the color of his shirt. But when Waylon was walking up front with them glasses, he looked like Fuller off of Home Alone.
Oh,
I
man.
can't imagine.
Is that the one that pees his pants in the attic? Oh, man. Oh, gosh. No.
Oh, like, because he was that cousin just looking like snidely at the other one saying, "You have to sleep with Fuller." And he wets the bed. He looks over at Fuller and Fuller's.
He opens that can of Coke, and he's drinking that.
Oh, Home Alone. You're thinking of Home Alone, yeah.
What did I say?
Full House.
You
I said Full House?
But
I knew what you were talking about.
Bro, I'm
Yeah,
losing.
I,
Yeah.
I really hope the outline on this podcast does not reflect that kind of brain fart quality.
Well, now that we've said part of the podcast, hey, don't talk about that at the table. Or your
Fart?
manners. Yeah.
I thought you said we were country people. Is that okay?
Oh, it is. Oh,
You know-
it probably is.
I mean, you don't do it? You don't fart at your table?
Never. We don't eat at the table though.
You don't even, yeah, I was going to say, you don't even eat at your table, dude, so I don't want to hear it.
dang.
I do have a question for you. What is at the table?
Well, what is at the table today for everybody that's tuning in, we've decided to go ahead and do about a 3-hour documentary on the eschatological importance of the eclipse we're going to have tomorrow.
I was actually going to say,
How
is
it
the rapture
connects-
going to come right after the eclipse?
How it connects to the sign of Jonah, the red heifer.
Oh, gosh.
The red heifer, let's go!
Hey,
He's right,
on
though.
On the real, though, that is kind of, that's.
Well, you see, the eclipse, it
Oh, here
X's
we
over
go.
these towns of
You
Nineveh.
know when Jesus said the sun would disappear?
Yeah, but listen, in the center of the X that the eclipse is going to make,
Rapture.
there's a town called Temple.
All
and
I'm
the
saying
Antichrist
is-
is going to stand
Stop,
in the temple,
stop.
and he's going to proclaim to be God.
Is all this stuff on
Hold
the
on.
internet?
Stop.
It's all over.
That's
yeah.
why.
No,
you're
see, you
bitter.
guys live in the wrong place. You need to look at the movie. It's called Left Behind.
Dude, don't disparage the
I'm not disparaging.
Don't disparage the Jenkins. They have way more money and platform. They can run a smear campaign and wipe us. I'm not watching your show no more, Dallas.
I'm sure that's really gonna hurt.
I am.
If he comes after us, I'm gonna start a YouTube channel about the Mormons and something to do with his show.
Everybody be saying that, dude. I'm like, y'all need to chill a little bit. Like,
I to this day don't understand why. I don't.
For real, like The Chosen has already gone past that. Like, it's not Mormon Jesus already. Like, you've already, you know what I mean? So it's just those theories are just.
Hey, producer, make sure that you clip that for the YouTube channel. Creek Love defends The Chosen.
Oh man, you might get hired on.
Dude, for real, I'm gonna have all these clickbait videos at the table podcast.
Whoa,
Man,
no,
dude.
We are not affiliated with them.
That's what I was gonna say.
Creek Love excommunicated.
I have the benefit of being ignorant of a lot of what is going on the internet, especially with this eclipse. But just from the stuff Trey told me, I understand why.
Well, we were driving. One more thing, we were driving back from Wichita. There's like all these signs saying like expect shutdowns, fill up before eclipse. I'm like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, it's because people are tripping, dude.
Several states are declaring a state of emergency. But it's because the travel. Like, there's so many people that are going to be traveling in and out of the state that normally aren't there that they're afraid it's going to cause gas shortages and stuff.
Well, I mean, I'm glad people really want to see it. I think it's cool. I think it's like, to me, it's a testimony of God's like sovereign will over creation, that these things still happen in their times and their seasons, you know, and they're trackable. We know where it's going to go, and that's a testament to God's like sovereignty to me, and it's beautiful. It's cool. I just don't think that everything in the world has to be connected to biblical prophecy.
The rapture.
Yeah, specifically that.
Yeah, that's a topic in and of itself. Well, to answer your question, that's actually not what's at the table. If you've tuned in this whole time, I'm sure you've caught on to the first 5 minutes of sarcasm we had.
Man.
That's not actually what we're going to talk about today. We had the privilege of having our dear brother and friend, Dr. Gates, come on and talk about the Sermon on the Mount for you guys the last time that we were on here. Such an amazing teaching. And we're going to pick up basically on the tail end of that story. So if you've been listening to this series so far, we kind of some of the analogy has been if you're treating this like you're reading through it in a narrative format, like a novel, and you got droopy-eyed and dropped the book on your face once or twice before you finally gave up on stopping to read for the night at the Sermon on the Mount, and then you woke up, and as you went to bed the next evening, you open the book back up again. We're going to kind of pick up where he left off in that kind of a fashion. So we're going to start off in the Gospel of St. Luke, if you're reading the King James Version, which I'm not. I'll be reading out of the ESV.
Yeah.
Yeah, baby. Yeah. In Luke chapter 7, verse 1. I kind of expected a little bit of a joke there, but it's probably good that you guys didn't give it. Anyway, so we're picking up in our Snake Crusher series. We're going to go ahead and start off in verse 1. He says, after he had finished all his sayings, pause. Just keep in mind that this is bookended, sort of, so to speak, right after the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus stands up and he gives this glorious sermon that is the most profound and explanatory commentary on God's law and what God expects from people and who people are and why they need God that you could ever hear in your life. So definitely go read this sermon. But on the back end of this sermon, it says, after he had finished saying all his sayings in the hearing of the people, he entered Capernaum. So he's back sort of in some of the same territory as where he grew up. He's from Nazareth, but Capernaum's not too far away. Now a centurion, which anybody care to explain what a centurion is?
Is that not a captain over 100?
Yeah, a centurion is an official in the Roman army.
Roman, yeah.
So someone that's not typically very friendly with Jews.
Somebody that Jews are not kicking it with.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So a centurion had a servant who was sick and at the point of death, who was highly valued by him. When the centurion had heard about Jesus, he sent to him elders of the Jews asking him to come and heal his servant. They pleaded with him earnestly, saying, "He is worthy to have you do this for him, for he loves our nation, and he is the one who built us our synagogue." Wow, that's pretty cool. Continuing on, and Jesus went with him, and when he was not far from the house, the centurion sent friends, saying to him, "Lord, don't trouble yourself, for I'm not worthy to have you come under my roof. Therefore I did not presume to come to you. But say the word, and let my servant be healed. For I too am a man set under authority, with soldiers under me, and I say to one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes, and to my servant, do this, and he does it." When Jesus heard these things, he marveled at him, and turning to the crowd that followed him, he said, "I tell you, not even in Israel have I found such faith." And when those who had been sent returned to the house, they found the servant well.
I don't want to be critical, but it seems like if Jesus wanted to get on the good side of the elders, he should have just built him a couple synagogues. He was a carpenter. I mean, this guy's a Roman, and they like him, so. I'm just saying.
Anyway, I will say it's interesting that you have a centurion building that Jews a synagogue.
Yeah.
And that he, let me put it this way. It seems that he, to some extent, honors God.
Yeah.
I don't know what all he's like or whatever, but
No, I
it
would
seems
agree.
that he has some sort of faith in Yahweh.
Well, and I'll tell you something that sticks out to me too, is that the centurion sends elders of the Jews.
Right.
I don't know exactly who that is, but so far, it kind of seems like a lot of the elders of the Jews have not exactly been
Right.
nicey nice with a lot of what Jesus
Man.
has done. But suddenly it's now like, oh, well, he's worthy for you to do this. He loves our people and our nation. He's the one that built us our synagogue.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't want to speculate too much because I don't know whether or not these elders are indeed Pharisees or unbelieving Pharisees. It wouldn't seem to be completely unbelieving Pharisees because
They know he can do it.
either that or they're making a weird concession
Yeah.
because they're pleading
Yeah.
to
They know he can do it.
our candidate for Messiah on behalf of this Roman guy. And something else that sticks out to me too is it doesn't necessarily go as far to say that this centurion is a proselyte, that he himself is now a practicing Jew.
Right.
But it says that he loves our nation, and he built us a synagogue, which is not a temple, but it is a place where people gather
For teaching.
to hear the teaching
Yeah.
of God's law. And he loves the people too, which is frankly not characteristic of a lot of what Israel has seen from Rome to begin with,
Right.
especially for someone that's a military man. This is not a politician.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. To me, it seems a little bit like an appeal to authority. Like,
Yeah.
you're the elders, so maybe you have a little bit of pull with this guy. I did you a solid. Maybe you can work your influence, and when Jesus does decide to come, like you read, I mean, that's basically the argument that the centurion makes for his faith, right? I'm a man of authority. I understand authority. I understand chain of command.
Right. And I find it interesting, too, that verse 3 says that when the centurion heard about Jesus, he sent the elders of the Jews. So he himself has not witnessed Jesus do anything with his own two eyes.
Yeah.
He has never seen it, but he hears. Now, I'm more than willing to bet that if you're willing to spend the kind of money to build somebody a synagogue, not a cheap thing to do, you might visit it once or twice.
Yeah.
This is speculative, of course. But not only may you not visit it one or twice, but if you love the people and you love the nation, and so you build them a house to be able to hear the teachings of their God, which is woven into the fabric of who they are as a people,
Yeah.
into all of their laws, into their nation, into the way that they're governed. Could it be that this centurion may have sat in on a scroll of Isaiah or two?
Yeah.
And when he hears about Jesus, it's like, hey, there's this guy that's from Nazareth, that place where all of David's line had fled to, the son of David walking around healing everybody. I mean, he can cleanse lepers, he can open blinded eyes, he's doing all of this crazy stuff. But what's fascinating to Jesus is his faith.
Yeah.
And it's so much so that he says, essentially, not even the Jews that you sent to me have this much faith.
Yeah.
No one in Israel have I found yet that believes like you do.
Something I think that is really interesting is, like you said, that there is this testimony from the elders saying this man's worthy. But when Jesus comes to his house, that's not the evaluation that he gives himself. He seems to understand that this person is above me and he's holy. I'm not worthy that you should even come underneath my roof. And whether that's an appeal to like the clean laws, clean and unclean laws or traditions of Jews, or if it's something more, a recognition of like you're better than me. We don't know, but I do think that that's something that sticks out in the eyes of Jesus. The people say you're worthy, but you know that you're not.
And there's kind of an is but is not thing here, at least in my mind too. You've got the soldier says in verse 8, the centurion says, "For I too," like meaning as well, "for I am too a man set under authority." It says, "And then I have soldiers under me."
Yeah.
So he there seems to, I don't know, almost be like a recognizing, like, I recognize that you have divine power and authority. You're set underneath it. And then you have those underneath you. And I kind of know how that works because, I'm not Caesar, but I carry a mantle of the authority of Caesar with me throughout the places that I go. So when I speak to somebody and I tell them to do something, they do it. If I tell one of my soldiers to do something, but it's where the metaphor kind of breaks down in a cool way is you're talking about the authority of how you speak to a sentient being, an intelligent being that can understand your speech and respond to you. Sickness is not a sentient being, right?
Yeah.
What kind of authority must a man possess to be able to rebuke an illness from a distance, not even be there, simply wish it to be gone and it be so?
Man.
How much faith do you have to have in the authority of this person?
Yeah.
And I think ultimately in who the person is, right? Like, it definitely to me seems like a message of divine authority. And it kind of fish hooks into this next story that reminds us a lot of something that we've already seen Jesus talk about, funny enough, at Capernaum, at his hometown. So in Luke chapter 7, verse 11, it continues and says, "Soon afterward, he goes to a town called Nain, which is also a town in the region of Galilee. And his disciples and a great crowd went with him. And as he drew near to the gate of the town, behold, a man who had died was being carried out, the only son of his mother. And she was a widow. And a considerable crowd from the town was with her. And when the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her and said to her, 'Do not weep.' Then he came up and touched the bier, and the bearer stood still. And he said, 'Young man, I say to you, arise.' And the dead man sat up and began to speak. And Jesus gave him to his mother. Fear seized them all, and they glorified God, saying, 'A great prophet has arisen among us, and God has visited his people.' And this report about him spread throughout the whole of Judea and the surrounding country."
I'd say so. How many prophets have been able to do that?
Yeah. Who rebukes death?
Yeah. Sickness and death and everywhere he goes. Yeah, I would say that's a pretty accurate assumption. I just want to point out real quick though, like the compassion. And I always think about like not just, I guess, narrowing Jesus down to like, oh, he's God, but also his humanity too. And I think that like that compassion is something to be seen here because he's able to look at this single mother basically and know like, man, life's going to be really hard for you. Life's already been hard for you and to you, and it's going to be even harder.
Yeah.
And as a person, like most scholars will tell you that they believe that Joseph's been out of the picture for, a decade or more at this point. So Jesus' mother is a widow, and just that kind of that understanding is like that he knows what it's like, right? He knows what life's like on the wrong side of things, and he's seen it for his own mother, and he sees this widow in the same situation, and his heart is broken with compassion. Yeah, to the point where he intervenes.
That's God's heart, though. Like that's what Dr. Bennett was talking about, was that the orphans and widows are the apple of God's eye, and it's no coincidence that the Messiah has the same heart as God.
Well, you get kind of that feel like from Hannah's song, in other spaces, like the high things being brought down low and the
Yeah.
low things being elevated.
Yeah.
You know, these chiasms, you know, things being flipped upside down. But overall, Creek, that's a super good point, is what we see in Jesus is his demonstration of the heart of God in everything that he does. And it's not just a demonstration of God's heart, but an exercising of God's power to change things according to his heart.
Yeah.
It's the same person that can speak based on a person's faith. He can tell those messengers, hey, go ahead and go home. It's been done. You know, I will it to be so. Can look at a dead kid that's being brought out in a funeral train, interrupt the funeral, probably the best funeral in. I mean, out of all people to be buried or die in Nain, nobody's luckier, right? You're getting brought out and met by the Messiah. You see, and really, to my mind, it just kind of brings up what we read about in our Easter special about the Messiah swallowing up on this mountain death forever.
Yeah.
Like, if you are going to trump death, must you not have also authority over death?
That's what the serpent really represents, right? It's for humans, right? Yeah, I mean that goes back to that Genesis curse where it says, "On your ground you will go, and you will eat of the dust of the earth." Well, who's that? Adam's name means dirt. Like, you're gonna go around eating man, and so the serpent is death. I mean, Satan represents death. He's the architect of death, and so if this Messiah is going to solve that problem, he has to have power over death.
Well, I find it really interesting, and this isn't to say that Jesus can't or didn't or wouldn't heal the rich or the powerful, but like that's not who he's going for.
We hope you're enjoying the show. If you are, give us a rating, review, and send this podcast over to a friend. If you want to contact us, email us at thetablepodcastmail@gmail.com. You can also find us on YouTube, Facebook, and any other podcasting platform. Ask us about merch, recommend topics or interviews, or just tell us what you think of the episode. Thank you for listening. Now, let's get back into the show.
Full disclosure to you guys, though, when I was making this outline, I looked back at the widow of Nain, and I don't know how I did this. I might be dyslexic, but I felt like I seen the widow of Pain.
Oh, gosh. I was thinking more of Joshua, son of Nun, and like Nain being like a funny way to say Nun.
Well,
we have Nain.
What I think it's just because like my phone screen is cracked to oblivion.
Yeah, it is. It's figured.
This is probably not what people expect for a halfway point.
You know what, though? I did look up what Nain means, and that's probably because I'm like some Alexandrian interpreter of scripture or something, but it means green pastures, and it had no relevance at all to the story. So I was like, well, that was a disappointment. Anticlimactic.
Anyway.
Except for it maybe contrast to the wilderness that the other widow was in.
Well,
We just unlocked the code.
Yeah. We now know when the rapture is going to happen.
Oh, man.
Rapture prediction Monday, April 8th.
Dude, now we're definitely clipped. Moving on.
After the eclipse.
This is the benefit of not, because I get to experience the humor of it for the first time, untainted. I had no idea that people were predicting the rapture.
They're
on our
freaking
pod.
out.
Yeah, it's happening. Anyway.
The rapture is, anyway.
Diving in.
Speaking of God with us, we're going to be picking up in Luke chapter 8, verse 22. So the story says, one day, verse 22 in the ESV, he got into a boat with his disciples and said to them, "Let us go across to the other side of the lake." So they set out, and as they sailed, he fell asleep, and a windstorm came down on the lake, and they were filling the water and were in danger. And they went and woke him, saying, "Master, Master, we are perishing." And he awoke and rebuked the wind and the raging waves, and they ceased, and there was a calm. And he said to them, where is your faith?
Man.
And they were afraid, and they marveled, saying to one another, who then is this, that he commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him?
Yeah, that's wild. Do you feel like there's been like an uptick of miracles? Like he starts off like, I can make wine. Like that's how he starts out. And then like, just like, next I'm going to heal a paralytic. And then, a sick guy. I'm raising the dead. I'm commanding the storm.
I'm commanding mastery. Well, and that's the thing that's so crazy. Like just the whole motif of this. You've got a dead person, a person that's about to be dead. And then after these two, we have the forces of nature that, and to be fair, I think, Dr. Gates does a way better job of this with his sermon, but just of what the seas in particular represent to the ancient Near Eastern mind.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, one of you two want to tackle that for the audience, just kind of do a brief.
So like the ocean would be like, not only would it be death, but it would be chaos. It's something that's untamable. It's unlivable. It's uninhabitable. Much like the wilderness. Whenever you have like wilderness talk, like when we talked about our snake crusher candidate, he goes into the wilderness for a fast, right? Well, that's a place where you don't live because it's arid. It's not it's not good for humans. And the same thing's true of the sea. It's chaotic. You can't live there. You can't breathe under there. Not only that, have you ever got into like a river that you can't see the bottom of?
Yeah.
Fear. No, I'm a big guy, and I'm not afraid of a lot. In fact, Ashlyn just asked me this yesterday, my oldest daughter. She's like, what are you most afraid of? I'm like, water I can't see in and heights.
That's the big
one. That's it.
Yep.
Like everything else, I'm pretty confident I can handle it. I'll find a way. Even if I can't beat it, I'll survive it. Right. Those two things elicit great fear, and that's the reason why is because that's where the monsters dwell. That's where the boogeyman is, literally. And not only that, but like especially the waters of this particular sea, like this is known for storms. Like they whip up out of nowhere, and they are horrible.
Yeah.
And the last place you want to be is in a rowboat in a storm. I have about 5 stories where me and Wadley have almost died in boats. So,
well, yeah, I think that's a good point. It's not livable space.
Yeah.
And I mean, now we have like submarines and stuff, I guess, so we kind of know a little more, but still we have like don't really fathom what's in the ocean, but also, or in deep waters. But I mean, I think the reason the ancient Near Eastern mind probably has that conception too has to do with Genesis, at least the Jewish one. Like, just chaos waters, like or wild and waste type of situation. Yeah. There's no, like, if you're in the middle,
lives there, bro.
If you're in the middle of the ocean, you're gonna die. There's no.
Yeah, it embodies like Sheol to an extent, which is the land of the dead, and like you said, and Leviathan for similar reasons. If you see this creature, your odds of survival are pretty low.
Remember that guy Jonah? He was in a storm. He got thrown off and eaten by a fish. You want that to happen to you?
I'll also say
Simon's name is son of Jonah. He's probably thinking hey, I ain't got nothing to do with that guy, all right?
Well, I'll also say it's really easy to read these stories and like, I mean, we all know not to do this, but it's so easy to read them. Wow, those disciples with their little faith.
Yeah.
They were scared of a storm. Wow. Like, that'd actually be a very terrifying situation.
Yeah. Well, and let's be fair with the details. And a windstorm came down on the lake, and they were filling with water and were in danger.
Yeah.
That's what Luke's gospel says. So it's almost like maybe he was talking with one of the eyewitnesses, and they were like, to be fair,
it was scary.
The boat was filling up.
Yeah. When he wrote his account, he was making sure, like, listen, we were not, like, out in left field, okay?
We definitely needed some divine intervention or we were going to die.
Listen, we are fishermen, okay? Several of us live on the water, and it was scary.
That's a really good point. But the thing that is funny, at least to me, and Creek, I love that you brought this up about Genesis. It's the manner, and shout out to my wife, Savannah, by pointing this out. It's the manner by which the raging waves and the wind and the chaos is made to stop. If you go to Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, and this kind of correlates to in John's gospel, which we camped out in for a while, for a couple of episodes. his whole motif is this: the Word made flesh, and the Word is the thing that made all things, and all things were made by him and through him. Right? If you go to Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, it says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and the world was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep." That'll be one translation, and as you guys have pointed out, the other is wild and waste, or chaotic, right? But if you think about what it means to be without form, it means lacking structure.
Yeah.
So God first makes the earth, and then the rest of the creation account is him bringing structure to the thing that is made.
Yeah.
But it starts out with the Spirit of God hovering over the face of the waters. Then God spoke and said, "Let there be light."
Yeah.
And there was light. And the rest of the 6 days of creation, all things being made, are being made consisting of the Word of God.
That's the best way to say that, by the Word. And we're going to get to that later on.
Yeah.
And we'll cover a little bit more, but by his Word, by the Word of God. And even, like you said, the Spirit, we saw the Spirit at John's baptism of Jesus. It descended on him.
Yeah.
He's got the Spirit. It's on him. And so I guess if you're going to be in a storm, the best place to be in it is with the Spirit.
Yeah.
And the Word.
Yeah.
Right. This is this would, I guess, be referred to as a creation miracle. Kind of like the water into wine deal. Changing the fabric of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is not a small thing.
No.
We live in Kansas, so nobody really, I don't know if any other state can appreciate changing weather patterns more than we do, except for maybe Oklahoma or Texas. They kind of get that too. Really the Midwest in general.
What I can tell you is this. You do that in this context, you're a god.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyone in that context sees you telling the wind and water what to do, you're Poseidon, you're Zeus, you're somebody. You're a god. You're not a man.
That one thing is for sure. You are not purely a man.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But in particular, like we said, that's for anybody's context. Definitely for us, for the Jew, they're going to should be looking at these circumstances. Let me say it that way.
Yeah.
With the same kind of eyes that we're taking through the Snake Crusher series, sort of a road to Emmaus, so to speak, is we're examining what God has portrayed as expectation of Messiah, which is ultimately expectation of himself.
Yeah.
And then if our candidates ever lived that out. And we've come to a person that's raising dead people to life, that's changing the substance of water into a well-aged wine, unlike what anyone has tasted. We're talking about a person that can speak to a leper, be cleansed, and they be cleansed. This is an uncurable disease. It is a death sentence. Walking death sentences are already death sentenced. Doesn't matter. The wind and the waves, the very forces of nature and chaos that sort of seem to be, let's say, the tail side of the coin for death.
Yeah.
It's like actually being dead, and then the things that symbolize death. And what we have seen so far in our Snake Crusher candidate is one that has mastery over them all.
Yeah.
When he speaks to death, it responds in obedience. When he speaks to chaos or the forces of nature, they respond in obedience. And what other time ever in the whole course of human history has the forces of nature responded to a voice and obeyed?
That's like what all the cultures are trying to do.
Yeah.
Is to control the weather.
Right.
Ironically, you've heard of it, rain dances and stuff. That's what every single culture is trying to do, to control the weather in some way, for their benefit.
Yeah, like child sacrifices to Baal were partially even linked to that, like trying to get rain and fertility or all of these other things that are,
I would say that, even centered around this story, and if we're looking to, like you said, through the same lens that they should be, at this mosaic of messiahship, what stories are kind of symbolized here? I mean, there is the Jonah story.
Yeah.
One is thrown overboard, and the winds, and the storm was sent by God. You have the Genesis story. You have Moses, right, in the command over the Red Sea. He can split it. Joshua, which Yeshua, kind of also a funny connection. But I mean, this is not something that's just out of the blue. There are stories in their Torah of prophets and men of God that walked in mighty, magical, seeming ways that had this power given to them by God. And so at the very least, you would like the response to the healing of the centurion's son or the widow's son, right? I got that backwards. The centurion's servant and the widow's son. The response should be like, this guy definitely is a great prophet. Like,
yeah. I was going to say, I'm really glad you brought that up, because think of the contrast.
Yeah.
The way that Elisha healed the widow's son. He like lays across her, and I don't know, what is it, a series of repetitions, like 3 times or 7 times, and then finally the child comes back to life.
Yeah.
This one says, go home. It's already been done. I already took care of it.
Dude, there's so much here because, like you said, and when God gave Moses the power to split the Red Sea or to turn it to blood and showed this kind of elemental power, what did he say? He said, I'm going to make you like a god to them. They're going to look at you and they're going to think you're a god because no one has this kind of power.
Yeah.
And so that you would think that there would be a shelf in your mind, and especially for the disciples. And I know that we don't want to look at them and say, like, oh, they didn't have any faith. Sure. But at the same time, if you just saw a guy raise somebody from the dead, and you just saw a guy heal, somebody from, a few blocks away, and you're seeing miracle after miracle, you would think that your expectation, your threshold would get a little bit higher, right? Yeah. Like, probably at least he's going to survive this storm, right? Well, maybe I scoot a little closer to him in the boat or something like that.
And that's so fascinating. Like, you think even with Moses, like, God tells him, take the rod of God in your hand and lift it up over the waters. And when you lift it up over the waters, it'll part, right? Well, this righteous branch, Jesus,
man,
not only does he need to be lifted up, he speaks for himself and for God. And it'll even go as far to say, everything that I do speak and say, he speaks it in the plural. He says, we speak. Yeah. Remember the conversation with Nicodemus? Yeah. We speak of what we have seen and what we know. Yeah. You don't understand it.
You don't get it.
And if I have told you of earthly things and you don't understand them, he goes as far to say, how can I tell you of heavenly things? Yeah. And we went over the whole who is ascended into heaven and come down and gathered the winds in his fist. And this same one that has gathered the winds in his fist simply needs to speak to them and say, be still. And they immediately stop. I mean, it's like, I want to say it's Isaiah, or maybe it's Job, where God whistles for the thunderbolt and it comes and goes wherever he bids it
Job,
to.
Yeah. Can you speak to the lightnings and they come and say, here we are.
Yeah.
That brings to the last point that I want to touch on this story. And if you guys have more, then that's fine. But there is another way to read these stories. And like you were talking about, like, who gathers the wind in his fist. Well, they have stories of gods. The pagans have gods that are accredited with that. And you can read this as a polemic. Like, Jesus is living out a polemic against these other gods, saying, where are you at, Baal?
Right. Baal, yeah.
Where are you at, God of storms? Because I just silenced you with one word.
Man.
Peace be still. You're beckoning to me like a dog, like it listens, and that's what they say. It's so like, what manner of man is this?
Yeah.
Like, who can shout to Baal and Baal falls down?
Yeah.
And shuts up. I mean, that you can read this as like a polemic, and a lot of these, like, we talked about death or sickness. Like you go to, like, is it Psalms 91? The arrows that fly by night and day, like these psalms where these kinds of things, they're attributed, and I don't want to get super woo woo, but these things are attributed to, like, entities, like the Raphesh, these things like sickness and disease and death are attributed to enemies, and Jesus is clearly showing power over every one of them by only his word. It's not a fight. It's not like Baal who has to conquer Leviathan. Because the epithet of Baal shows Baal. He has to go and he has to rip Tiamat and he has to fight the sea dragon. Jesus is on a boat.
Right.
And all he says is, peace be still, and it is, and it lays down. It's like, I almost see it like a dog where he's just like, hey, lay down. And Tiamat, Leviathan, falls down at his feet. Like, that's just so good. That's just the way that it is.
Man.
It's God's, and this is all throughout the Old Testament too. God reveals himself to show the people that I'm not like the other gods.
Yeah.
You don't have to go sacrifice your child, so I'll do such, so I'll love you, Abraham. You don't have to go,
Bro, that's
you get what I'm
good.
saying.
You just sparked that in my brain when you're talking about the binding of Isaac. Like, the point of that story, not just to be prophetic, but for Abraham, like, I'm not like the other gods.
Right.
I'll give you a sacrifice. You don't need to sacrifice your son. You know, I'm not. That's not. And later in the Torah, you're going to see places where it says like that thought never enters even to the mind of Yahweh.
That was like 2 episodes ago, right, when we were talking about like the showbread of the presence in the temple and how it was like a way of Yahweh distancing himself from the gods of the nation, saying, I don't need your provision. I am your eternal present provider.
Yeah.
I am your caregiver.
Well, and it's also clear, too, that Jesus is not in need of us, first off. Not in need of, I guess, the disciples. But to say, too, like, you know, his requirement is faith. It's not a sacrifice. It's not a grain offering, whatever you want to call it. It's not anything like that. It's simply for you to follow, for you to give your life in faith.
And maybe if like a widow or if a Gentile centurion can count on compassion from me, maybe you who are my friends,
Right.
maybe you could think better of me than that.
Well, and
You know, maybe you could have faith in my character.
it's amazing because we started this whole thing out with a conversation or with a story about a centurion, a Roman officer who says, I too am a man under authority.
Yeah.
And then I have men under my authority. And ultimately them being under my authority, of course, is under the umbrella of the higher authority that's set over me. But I love how that's sort of linked like to what the disciples say. What manner of man is this?
Yeah.
That when he commands, like, how can that be anybody's soldier?
Yeah.
How can the forces of nature be anyone's servant? How can this creature / entity that seems to encompass this whole matrix of ideas of what it means to resemble death, hell in the grave, it like with Job, right? He says, would you bind Leviathan with a cord and let him loose to play with your children?
Man.
Does he speak sweet words in covenant to you? You know, it just portrays Jesus in this fashion of, look, everything is mine. Everything is under my command.
Yeah, and not only does it portray him as the conqueror per se, like I'm in control here, and then there's nothing anybody can do about it. But it also is like, he saved your life. He clearly loves you. He clearly has a purpose for
that's
you.
what I was getting at.
He clearly wants to preserve you for some reason, and it's not out of need or on his behalf.
It's love.
Yeah.
It's love. I think that too. Like, you guys are late to the game in understanding this. You know, back 3 episodes ago when I'm in the wilderness, Jesus in the wilderness doing the testing, Satan told him, tell that rock to turn into bread. Satan knows, you know, the winds and the waves know, sickness knows, death knows. They know who the boss is.
The same one that made them, that they obeyed in the beginning.
Said, tell that rock to become bread. You know, it's
dude.
like, you guys are we are the only people that don't know. We are the only people that don't understand.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Or, Well, and the next story just dovetails so beautifully with that. It showcases another element of control or power. So verse 26 says, when they sailed to the country of the Gerasenes, which is opposite of Galilee, so this is the other side of the lake. When Jesus had stepped out on land, there met him a man from the city who had demons. For a long time he had worn no clothes, and lived not in a house, but among the tombs. That's weird.
Yeah.
When he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell down before him and said with a loud voice, what have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me. For he commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. For many of the time it had seized him. He was kept under guard and bound with chains and shackles, but he would break the bonds and be driven out by the by the demon into the desert. Jesus then asked him, "What is your name?" And he said, speaking of Romans, "Legion," for many demons had entered him. And they begged him to command them not to depart into the abyss. Now a huge herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside, and they begged to let him enter these. So they gave him permission, and the demons came out of the man and entered the pigs. And the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and drowned. That to me is like, whoa. How many was it approximately that are in a legion? I read something that was like a little over 5,000 typically comprised.
That's a lot of demons in one dude.
And I'm not necessarily saying the scriptures saying, hey, I mean, Luke even says, legion, for many demons entered him.
Yeah.
But it depicts like this person is not in a bad way. He's in the worst way.
Right.
It doesn't get worse than this. You're not even living in a home anymore. You're filled with so many evil spirits that when guards shackle you and bind you with fetters and chains, not ropes,
right,
metal chains.
Yeah.
You're breaking metal chains and running out to go live in the tombs among the dead. And in a region, mind you, and that is filled in the ancient Near East with all kinds of religious, pagan expectation.
Yeah.
Like this circumstance just portrays a guy in the darkest of dark. And it seems like the story portrays it as soon as the boat docks on the lake.
Running.
This demon meets Jesus, falls down. One translation says the man fell down and worshipped him. Yeah. And the demon cried out and said, "What do we have to do with you, Son of the Most High God?"
I don't know why. It just sounds like a Thriller album to start out. Like,
I can't stand this guy.
This dude lives among the tombs. I mean, like,
It is extremely, like, crazy to imagine this man. Like Mark's gospel says, and when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and fell down before him. The King James does say worshipped him. I mean, maybe that's what falling down means.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the part of it, yeah.
But what do you have to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? Like, oh, you already know who this is. So, like,
dude, did you?
Nobody else has really called him that yet.
Yeah, that's exactly what Trey said. Right? It's like not only the forces of nature, or let's say a lack of structure kind of chaos, but all kinds of chaos, including the intelligent forces of evil.
Yeah,
they know who you are.
Well, it's funny. He says, "I adjure you by God, do not torment me." And somewhere else, a demon, probably in the future, a demon says, like, "Have you come to torment me before the appointed time?"
Yeah.
Clearly, like, these demons recognize who this is. How so? I'm not sure.
Well, think about that. Like, well, not only that, in conjunction, they begged him to not command them to depart into the abyss.
The abyssos.
Right.
Yeah.
In the Greek, the abyssos. This is like where the sons of God are locked in chains.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to go there.
Yeah.
It's the bottomless pit.
It's the jail under the jail.
Yeah. This is solitary, like, confinement.
Yeah. If you can think of like 5 tiers below the Pentagon, like you're in the prison house for real.
I do think it's that they call him the Son of the Most High God. Like, and if it's the sons of God that went down into the daughters of men, and that's the narrative, and like these are the progenies, the departed spirits of the progenies of those sons of God and the daughters of men. It's just kind of funny because it's like they don't call him the Son of God because they're familiar with plenty of those types of beings, but they say you're the Son of the Most High God.
Well, and just something to point out too, like that just adds to that, is like you don't often see malevolent evil. Well, that's kind of redundant. Malevolent spirits that are greater in power than anything, begging it not to torment it.
Right.
Yeah.
The very fact that this demon is terrified, all of them actually, because there's a lot that are in this guy, is terrified. But it reminds you of like when Jesus raised the widow's son in Nain, it says they were all seized with fear and they glorified God. Like this demon is seized with fear. The forces of darkness at the sight of this one that calls to Leviathan and says, "Do what I tell you to do," and he does it. And what does it say about Leviathan and Job? Will he speak with you with soft words and make pleas with you? Like, will he swear a covenant to you to be your servant forever? You get this whole kind of this motif painted by God as like, these things that you're most afraid of, I command fear from everything.
Yeah.
I'm the guy. And this demon confirms it.
They're like the
You're
centurion.
the son of the Most High God.
Yeah.
Like,
They recognize authority too.
Right. Exactly. Good point.
Yeah. Respect my authority.
It's there's a lot of cases of Jesus casting out demons, but this is easily like the worst. Like there's other times where it talks about they overpower people or whatever, but this dude's like breaking chains like this, and I don't know how. I can't exactly explain everything, but
he's like the reverse of Samson.
Yeah.
Like Samson is filled with the fear of God, and he's snapping chains. But this guy's like not the spirit of God.
I had to process that statement for a second.
Anti-Samson.
Yeah. He's the anti. There you go. Yeah, sorry.
It's, however many demons are in this guy, clearly the numbers don't matter. And whether it's 5,000 or 1,000 or whatever, I'm sure it's up there.
It's a lot, yeah.
But yeah, not even a threat.
To me, what it seems like too is this is the end of an age, like where those things had ultimate control, like ultimate power. You're not going to tell. No one in the Decapolis area was telling that guy, like, you're not going to bind him with chains. You're not going to bring him up before the court. He busts out it and he runs. Like, those things have a level of authority and power that can't be controlled, can't be contained. And this coming of this candidate, he seems to be the end of an era for these types of beings, these principalities, where he comes in and they're aware something's happening.
Yeah, they've been placed on notice.
Yeah, and that's what they say is, are you going to send us into the abyss? Like, that's ultimately they know the destination's going to be there. It's a matter of when.
Right.
And this seems to be like a checking of the time. Like, is it that time?
Why did Jesus send him into the pigs? Like, I don't know.
Well, and I want to say it's Mark's gospel that acknowledges that that the number of those pigs was about 2,000. So this isn't like a little 4-H project. There's a ton of pigs.
You know what's crazy? I just thought about this too. It almost seems like Jesus dunks on them because they don't want to go into the abyss, which is the water. It's the chaos waters that he just showed control over, and so he sends them into the pigs, and then the pigs go run off a cliff into the water. He just dunks on them. Like,
I know this is definitely speculation, but I've always imagined that it's like a Jewish guy that has all the pigs, and Jesus just smokes all the pigs just to be like, you should never had them pigs,
unclean. It is an interesting point though that it says that in I believe you read it in it's either Luke's account or Matthew's account where it says that the spirits drove him into the desert often. It seems to like be this aversion to like water because of the abyss thing. Like we don't want to go there, and it's please don't send us into the abyss. They want to go to the dry places when they're cast out.
Right.
And Jesus is like, yeah, you go to the pigs.
Well,
and then dunks the pigs into the water, baptizes them with
says,
the abyss. Like, I don't know.
It says the pigs drowned in the sea, so I don't know what that exactly means. What does that mean for the demon?
They went in the sea. We know
guess
that.
so. I don't. Can they climb back up the cliff? I
see it like a cosmic toilet. Like you see a galley starts churning, flushes
a cosmic toilet. A cosmic toilet.
Hey, what do you do with crap? Flush it.
What do you do with the uncleanliness?
I flush it,
rid
dog.
of it.
I can't
You flush it into the abyss, dog. That's what I do with it.
Man. Well, the story actually has a really sad. Well, hey, just a quick note. So the Decapolis at this time was most likely under control by Syria. Just kind of a funny link because we talked about Naaman the Syrian and his faith in comparison to the centurion. But in Luke 8, chapter 8, verse 34, it talks about honestly just a very sad ending to this story. It says, when the herdsmen saw what had happened, they fled and told it to the city and in the country. So this particular region is a part of something called the Decapolis, which means an area of 10 cities. So this region encompasses a pretty big amount of people, you would assume. Then the people went out to see what happened, and they came to Jesus and found the man whom the demons had gone, sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind.
Wow.
And they were afraid. And they said, and those who had seen it told them how the demon-possessed man had been healed. Then all the people of the surrounding country from the Gerasenes asked him to depart from them, for they were seized with great fear. So he got in the boat and returned. And to me, I don't know, it's like you cross the Lake of Galilee over into Gentile territories. And we remember what Isaiah said, right?
Yeah.
A great light shines in Galilee,
Yeah.
right? And you cross this Sea of Galilee and you go over here and you exercise control and mastery over what is a representative of the falls that we've talked about in Genesis 3, the progeny of Genesis 6, and then ultimately in Genesis 11, which was the divorce of the nations from God and him turning them over, him giving them away.
Yeah.
And he's here and he's casting these demons out in this region of this man, almost that's living among tombs of dead people. And he's casting them out. And to me, it almost kind of feels like the outstretched hand of Emmanuel to the nation saying, these can't control you anymore.
Yeah.
Come home. And the response is they're so afraid. They're like, they're begging Jesus to leave.
Yeah.
They don't want him to stay. Like,
Yeah.
would you rather have that guy back?
Right.
Well, I think that what it does, and Dr. Bennett puts me in a mindset, like, and he's given me a filter through which I see things, and it's like all they can see is the loss of profit.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
They can't see that, like, no, a person has been saved, and it's like that, the parable of the prodigal son, right? You know, he's not happy that the brother came back. He's more mad that he wasted all of his inheritance, and it's like just a way of looking at things where it's like
you care about those stupid pigs more than you care about.
It's a backwards way of looking at things.
And I'll tell you something else, and as we get close to landing the plane, you remember like how with Naaman the Syrian, how whenever he told Elisha, he said, hey, my master's an old guy, and when he goes into the house of his God, you know, he needs help to get down and up when he goes to worship him. So I kind of got to stick my arm out and let him get down and bring him back up. He said, but I now know there is no God save the God of Israel. There's no other God, and I'll never worship another. And Elisha he says, hey, yeah, you're fine. Go in peace. You know. Naaman asked him one more question. He says, hey, permit me to carry a couple camel loads full of dirt back home.
Yeah.
And it seems like to our mind such an odd request.
Yeah.
But the desire is ultimately because of the way that they see and this ancient Near Eastern worldview. In Naaman's mind, if I go back home, I'm back in that God's territory.
Yeah. Cosmic geography.
And that's hostile to me.
Yeah.
Because I'm hostile to him.
Yeah.
I won't worship him ever again.
Man.
And not only
So
that,
good.
if I go back there, I'm not with Yahweh.
Yeah.
Yahweh's people are here in Yahweh's land. Well, I can't come live here. So can I take some of your home with me?
Yeah.
That way I can always
I'm
be
gonna shout.
always be with God. And you get a similar response from this guy. This one that's been delivered. In verse 38, it says, the man from whom the demons had gone begged him that he might stay with him. But Jesus sent him away and said, return to your home and declare how much God has done for you. And he went away proclaiming throughout the whole city how much Jesus had done for him.
Dude, that's so fire, because it's like, you think that you have to come back with me now, that you're under my authority, but I'm I just put everyone here on notice that I'm
Yeah.
coming for you.
Yeah.
They're gone.
Yeah.
Those spirits that ruled this region, they just got flushed into the Sea of Galilee. They're gone. I ran them out of here. And you are going to be my ambassador, telling them that the king who's in authority is coming here.
Yeah.
And this is mine.
And the same one, think about the testimony.
Yeah.
This same one that ran around with no clothes on,
Yeah.
out of his mind, probably committing some pretty heinous crimes. Why else would you be put in chains?
Right.
Yeah.
Why else would you be shackled? And no matter how many chains you put on him, no matter what you do to try to get him to stop, you can't. This same guy that you seen doing that is now running throughout your region, not only clothed fully, physically, but his mind and his heart have been healed and restored, and he's clothed, and he's saying, hey, look what God has done through me, through this Jesus. And like you said, it is a reclaiming of territory.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds you of what it looks like when you sit in a pitch black room. You're in Decapolis, and it's pitch black, and a little candle gets lit.
Yeah.
And that little candle, just like our Easter, or not our Easter, our Christmas Eve services, one candlelight touches another one.
Yeah.
And it lights it. And one touches another one, and it lights it. And you see Decapolis start to get illuminated. In the same way, I wonder.
A great light shines.
Yeah, a great light shines in Galilee. And this Galilee region overlooks the borders of the nations. And it's not just a signal, because Galilee it's Israeli territory, but it's bordered as such to say, come.
Yeah.
And not just come, but I'm coming to you.
Yeah.
So good. And I mean, I can imagine with Naaman that if you have that kind of faith with Elisha, where you say, I now know there is no God save the God of Israel. I now know there's no other like him, and I will never for the rest of my days worship another.
That's right.
And you go back to your Syrian king, who sent you over here to begin with because he can't afford for you to die. And you tell him, it wasn't the God of Syria that delivered me from this.
Man.
It was the God of Israel, and there's none like him. What a testimony, both of these guys.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful. Not only this adds to that testimony. He said, Jesus specifically says, go home to tell your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. To me, it kind of sounds like, and this is a little bit speculation, but maybe this guy kind of somehow invited these demons. Maybe there was something he was doing that caused him to get one, and then he got more. I don't really know, but Jesus clearly had a plan for the man to go tell everyone about the mercy that.
Yeah.
And if God can forgive all that, if the Lord, Jesus doesn't say me, he says the Lord.
Yeah.
Clearly, he's saying I'm the Lord.
Yeah.
If he's saying that, then he can have compassion and mercy on anybody else there, even the ones who were begging him to leave.
Whom he chooses,
Yeah.
as the writer of Hebrews will say.
Yeah.
I do think that, like, in summation on this episode, it seems like that it's bookended by statements of authority.
Yeah.
The centurion says, like, I'm under authority, and there are people under authority. When I tell them to go, they go. And when they tell them to come, they come. And we end this episode with a statement of this Son of Man, this, Jesus' authority over, like, even enemy troops. Like, you don't want to go to the abyss because that's where your commanders are.
Yeah.
Because I locked them in there.
Yeah.
But ultimately, if I tell you to go packing, you'll go jump in a cell with them. That's the way that it is. I've got that kind of authority and power. And
Mufasa.
it just seems like that, like, for the purpose of this episode, like, what this snake crusher has shown is authority over everything, over sickness, over death, over entities, over storms, over demons. But not only is it authority, because we're humans and we understand authority. All of us are always understand authority. But what happens when authority is combined with compassion and mercy? The person that has all the authority in the world will look on a widow's son with compassion, or will look on this man who lives among the tombs and say, like, yeah, go tell everybody that I have mercy for you.
Yahweh.
Yeah. Yeah.
The I am is with us, Emmanuel.
That's right.
So good.
So good. Well, I think that kind of wraps up the episode for today. If you would, guys, go ahead and go to all of our social media. We got a lot of stuff popping. The Instagram's kicking off. We got the TikTok rolling off. Facebook stuff. Big things are coming. Some of you guys will see that this is our first attempt at getting into video podcasting for a YouTube channel. And so that's going to be a journey. And I just ask you, support us and ride with us on it, Go give, share, subscribe. Check out our Easter special video. Turned out really good. We got more of that kind of content coming. So praise be to God. And until next time, Godspeed.
Amen. Later, y'all.
Catch you later.
This is Pastor Kevin O'Connor, and you're listening to At the Table Podcast.
This is Dylan from Jamaica, and you're listening to At the Table Podcast.
Hello, this is Dr. Kent Hovind of Dinosaur Adventureland and with the At the Table Podcast.
Hey, this is Savannah Donaldson, and you're listening to At the Table Podcast.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of At the Table Podcast. We hope it blessed you, and we hope it taught you something. Until next time, thank you so much, and God bless.